Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, both in person and those who may be watching the live stream at home. Just a reminder for anybody that's in person today, if you could please make sure that your cell phones or any kind of electronic devices are turned off during the duration of the service. And for those who are able, would you please stand?
Please be seated, everyone. Welcome, everyone. We've gathered together today in person and from afar virtually to honor, remember, celebrate, and give thanks for the life of Miss Peggy Stewart. My name is Adam Corrigan Hollowitz, and I'm a life celebrant with A. Miller George Funeral Home. And it's an honor and a privilege to be with you all today as we celebrate the life of this extraordinary person. This is a time of thanksgiving for Peggy, a supportive sister to Barb, a proud aunt to Rob and Dee Dee, and a friend to so many people. As Barbara and Dee Dee discovered this past few weeks, Peggy had countless photographs of friends, and she kept so many notes and cards her friends had sent her over the years. This speaks to the huge circle of people that Peggy valued and held close in her life. Today is also an opportunity for you to find solace and comfort as you continue to process the passing of Peggy. Funerals are a time and a place for family and friends to grieve a loved one and allow healing to begin safely away from the pressures and distractions of our greater world. This is a space where you can allow the feelings you're experiencing, whatever they may be, to work their way through naturally. The experience we call grief is our natural way to process these big changes that occur in our lives. And grief can make us feel a lot of emotions and not always sadness. And it's important to acknowledge that and to recognize that this can be a disorienting experience for us. You do not need to ever measure your grief against anyone else. If you find yourself crying, you don't need to hide that. Crying has nothing to do with being strong or weak at a time like this. Likewise, if you don't find yourself crying, that does not mean you're feeling this loss any less. Always in grief, our heart is our best guide on this journey. And your heart will tell you when and how you are hurting and when you need to make space for yourself. We all will experience grief at points in life. And people often think of grief as getting smaller over time. In fact, it's our lives that continue to grow bigger around that grief as our lives get bigger in beautiful and surprising new ways. And over time, that grief becomes relative to the rest of our life, comparatively much smaller and easier to manage. Eventually, that grief becomes a little mark, an emblem of the love we have. And our lives are so much better for having that kind of love, the love that hurts when we experience loss. Well, it's my sincere hope that the time we spend together today is comforting and nourishing for you, wherever you may be. You'll notice on the memorial cards there was a story about a starfish. This is a story that Barb and Dee Dee found all over Peggy's house. It was a favorite of hers. It's a story she used to send out in newsletters to clients. There are several versions of this story, but they all have the same message. They illustrate how the small act of one person can make a big difference in the life of someone else. This story is emblematic of how Peggy lived her life. She believed strongly in charity and making a difference in one's community. From her involvement supporting Epilepsy Canada and Brain Injury Canada to being on the board of the Hay Foundation, and of course her dedicated membership in the Kiwanis Club, Peggy lived what she preached. The story reads, once upon a time, there was an old man who used to go to the ocean to do his writing. He had a habit of walking on the beach every morning before he began this work. Early one morning, he was walking along the shore after a big storm had passed, and he found the vast beach was littered with starfish as far as the eye could see, stretching on in both directions. Off in the distance, the old man noticed a small boy approaching. As the boy walked, he paused every so often, and as he grew closer, the man could see that the boy was occasionally bending down to pick up an object and throw it back into the sea. The boy came closer still, and the man called out, "Good morning. May I ask what you're doing?" The boy paused. He looked up and he replied, "Throwing the starfish back into the ocean. The tide has washed them up onto the beach, and they can't return to the sea by themselves," the boy replied. And the boy continued, "When the sun gets high, they will die, unless I throw them back into the water." Well, the old man replied, "But there are tens of thousands of starfish on this beach. I'm afraid you won't really be able to make much of a difference." Well, the boy bent down. He picked up yet another starfish, and he threw it as far as he could into the ocean. Then the boy turned and smiled, and he said, "It made a difference to that one." We will now invite Peggy's longtime friend Anita and Anita's daughter Tanya to share their memories and thoughts on Peggy.
Hello, my name is Tanya. I am honored to be asked to say a few words about Auntie Peggy, a woman I've known my entire life and one I will miss dearly for the remainder of it. Auntie Peggy was my mom's best friend for 57 years. Every occasion, big or small, Auntie Peg was there. From birthdays to graduations, to the births of my children, to celebrations of life, Aunt Peg was my constant. Her infectious smile and gentle nature have always been such a comfort to me. I admired her in so many ways. One that stands out the most is her generous gift of time. Giving back to the community was very important to her. She gave countless hours to the Kiwanis group to helping animals in need, always with a smile and a warm heart. She became my role model in the gift of volunteerism. As I continue with the work I do in the community, I know in my heart she will be right there with me. Finding the words that adequately describe such an amazing woman is very hard. Finding the right words to describe the hole she has left in my and my family's heart is impossible. I think this poem puts into words what my heart and maybe yours is feeling. It is by Donna Ashworth. When I go, don't learn to live without me, just learn to live with my love in a different way. And if you need to see me, close your eyes, or look in the shadow when the sun shines. I'm there. Sit with me in the quiet, and you will know that I did not leave. There is no leaving when one soul is blended with another. When I go, don't learn to live without me. Just learn to look for me in the moments. I am there. Rest in the sweetest of peace, Auntie Peg. I'll look for you in the moments.
Hello, my name is Anita Zweers, and I'm here today with my daughter Tanya to celebrate the life of Peggy. I met Peggy on November the 22nd in 1967, and we have been best friends for 57 years. Peggy has shared with me a lifetime of memories, from being my maid of honor to watching my two daughters grow up into fine young women with families of their own. She would love to come to many events that the children were part of, and they were always so happy to see her smiling face in the crowd cheering them on. I am very proud of the accomplishments that Peggy took on, from being an EEG tech to running her own company, We Care. Peggy always wanted to have a variety store, so she did and loved it, and meeting all the neighbors that would come in daily. And if you were lucky and there at the right time, a cup of tea would be offered. Then it was on to real estate, which she much enjoyed and made many new friends. Peggy had a very full life and enjoyed every moment of it. She worked very hard. I am so blessed to have been able to share these years with her. My dear friend, I hope that it is eternal spring for you in heaven. I know how much you love that time of the year, as you loved your spring at Rosehaven. Thank you for being the person that you were until we meet again. My love and my family's love to you always. God bless.
Thank you, Tonya and Anita. We will now invite Peggy's nephew, Rob, to come and speak about his aunt.
Well, first off, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here on this weekend, from the whole family here. It means a lot to see everyone here, especially on a long weekend, and then especially Thanksgiving. So we really do appreciate it, and we thank everyone for these last few months. They've been trying, to say the least, and just really appreciate everything that everyone's done, and it's been amazing, and it speaks volumes about Peggy on how everyone has come together to help in these times, and it's been truly amazing. See if I can get through this here. One of the things about Peg, I think we all know, is she always had great stories, and we'd hear them all the time. And so when I was thinking about what to say, I thought, I kept coming up with these stories, and so I thought I'd share a couple that I experienced personally with Peg. So again, I apologize if you've heard them 1,000 times, and you probably have, and Dee Dee, I know you have. So I'll start with this. So the story I'll begin with was back when I was 6 or 7 years old. So it was a while ago. And Peg was going on a road trip down to Tennessee to pick up and bring back her American cousin Tim for a visit with his Canadian relatives. Of note at that time, Tim was suffering from leukemia, one of the cancers Peg had at the end too. Tim also did not have much time left and wanted to visit his distant relatives, but couldn't do it himself. So Peg stepped up to drive down and get him. As part of this adventure, she wanted me to come along for the journey. I remember feeling so special and important at the time. And at the time, I did not understand the gravity of the situation, but I did know Tim was sick and needed our help. Now, apparently, I was a bit of a handful back in those days. So when Peg came to my mom and suggested I come with her, the response went something like this. You want to take Rob away for 2 weeks? Here's his bags. Have a nice trip. So, due to my abundance of energy, Peg and Mom were coming up with different ways to keep me busy for the long hours in the car. They built me a coloring stand out of a cardboard box that was cut out at the bottom to fit over my legs and as I sat in the seat. Then I could work away doing my various projects they had devised for me to pass the time. But that managed to keep me occupied, but didn't release any of the abundant energy I had. Another idea Peg came up with was to bring a bat and ball. We would stop every few hours so at a rest stop or a park, and the idea was she would pitch the ball to me and I would hit it. And now comes the genius part of this idea. I was to run as fast as I could to get the ball and bring it back to her to do it all again. So young me was only too eager to show how good a baseball player I could be and how far I could hit the ball and the quickness and the speed I could bring it back. We would do this for 15 to 20 minutes until I was tired enough, and then back in the car, driving for more driving, and I would fall asleep. This happened through the whole trip, and then Tim even joined in on the ride back. So Peg or Tim would pitch the ball to me, I would hit the ball as hard as I could, then run after it as quick and fast as I could and bring it back. Then on the last day, we were very close to being home. We stopped one last time for this game. We got out, we went over to the park, and I looked at her and said, "This time I pitch." I heard that story every year since. It's about 45 years of that story. I like that story for many reasons. It shows who Peg was and many of the traits she exhibited throughout her life. She was selfless. Tim needed help. She was there for him. It was not many people that would use their vacation time and savings to go to the aid of a distant relative rarely seen or heard from, but that was Peg. She made you feel special and important. It didn't matter how young you were or who you were. She had a way of connecting with you to evoke these feelings. And I can assure you that it was genuine. Peg was also very maternal. Although she never married or had children, she was the most motherly person. She was willing to take a young boy who had never been away from his parents at a time for a couple of weeks in another country as well. She managed to be there for me in all ways on that trip. Homesickness was never a concern for either of us. From even my young age and before the time of this story, she was the third parent to my sister and I our whole lives. She stepped up even more so when our father passed in our teens. She was always there for us. And again, it didn't matter who you were. Michelle and Tanya. Her godson, Darcy. And I'm sure I'm missing some here. Peg's maternal instincts were extremely strong. Another trait this story shows of her is her intelligence. Whether it was devising a contraption so her young nephew could entertain herself on a long ride, Her lifelong journey, continuing education that resulted in numerous degrees, diplomas, certificates, and accreditations. Peg, as she would say about others, was one smart person. These are about a few of the virtues and traits that made Peg who she was. I would like to come back to one of those traits, how she made us all feel special and important. In trying to understand what I was going to write about, I seemed to keep thinking of examples of how she made me feel throughout my life. And I'm sure everyone in this room today can relate to what I'm trying to express here about Peg. And what better way to discuss than with another story? Now, I think all of us know Peg's love of antiques and anything old with history and charm. Her house and everything in it was very particular and unique and fit with this theme. Her living room was like stepping back in time 100 years, and everything in it had its place and fit perfectly with the decor. So imagine, if you will, how this gets stepped up at Christmas time. It's another level of well thought out placement of items to fit old theme of Christmases long ago. Our family had a tradition at Christmas, started by my grandmother, Peg's mother, of giving ornaments for the Christmas tree. So here's young Rob again, with a brilliant idea of what to give his Auntie Peggy for an ornament. I was so sure it would be perfect. I loved it and was very proud. I wrapped it and put it in her stocking. Christmas morning came, and Peg unwrapped her ornament and was very excited, and a very excited little Rob was watching. And what did Peg unwrap? A small skeleton that could be hung on the tree. So just imagine the horror. Skeleton, horror, yeah. That must have been inside Peg when she unwrapped a skeleton ornament. But that was just it. She kept it all inside. And then proceeded to go on about how thoughtful and great an ornament was. She went promptly over to the tree and hung it proudly on the front, never once letting on that it was anything but perfect, but rather how ecstatic she was to have been given this ornament. That was Peg. She always made you feel good about yourself and what you were trying to do. Even if it could possibly have been the worst and most inappropriate item to be in her perfect room and on her perfect tree. She realized the importance and meaning it had to you, and therefore was just as important and meaningful to her. So she put it on her tree every year since. Admittedly, it did move to the back, but it was there. Peg had this wonderful way of connecting with us, whether it was being with her or having conversations on the phone. You always felt better about yourself and what it was you were doing. She gave us the confidence to be ourselves and to carry on. I find that this trait to be incredibly unique and special. That you knew you were to have a chat with Peg, you were going to feel better afterwards. That stability in our lives where someone always had your back and knowing that person was always there for you. It is this stability in Peg I'm sure we will all miss. This transitions nicely into Peggy's other main virtue she displayed prominently, and that was family. For family included her friends. There was no distinction between or reason to consider them differently. You all were family to Peg and to us. Anita, Peter, Big John, Bonnie, Darcy, the many colleagues she had throughout the years, and I do apologize for not naming you all. There are, quite frankly, just too many of you. I wanted to acknowledge you all and let you know that how important each and every one of you were to her. Peg spoke of you as if you were family. And in her mind, you were. We would hear of your accomplishments and your difficulties, all while respecting your privacy and dignity. She would speak of you as if you were her own, with the fondness and love that only a family member can. I truly hope that we can all continue on in this family that Peggy has created for us. Please stay in touch. It would make her so happy to know that we are all continuing on in life together. Oh, apologize. One final story. On that road trip to Tennessee, we had a stop that both Peg and I will never forget. I believe it was somewhere in Kentucky because I recall the most brilliant grass field we were in. We had stopped for the night and we were all tired, so there's no need for the baseball game. It was dusk on a beautiful summer's morning. The sun was almost set and it was getting dark, but a few golden rays shone through in the background. Then we noticed that all at once we were surrounded by little sparks of light dancing all around us. We were walking amongst fireflies. The pure joy and smiles that poured out of us at that moment was incredible. The way we both played and danced through the field that evening was something that was etched in both our minds for the rest of our lives. Peg or I would bring it up from time to time and look at each other with a knowing glance of how perfect and peaceful that moment was to us. This is where I picture Peg now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Peggy was a dedicated member of the Kiwanis Club, and we will now invite Paul Garrett, president of the Kiwanis Club of Forest City, London, to share his words and memories about Peggy.
Glasses might be helpful. Thank you, Barbara, Dee Dee, and Adam for allowing me to speak this morning. Thank you so much. Well, I was finding my way through a new life after a rare neuroimmune disease turned my world upside down. In searching for a connection, I reached out to Peggy Stewart, whose name I discovered while exploring resources for accessibility. Our first meeting marked the beginning of an incredible journey together. Peggy, a tireless advocate for accessibility across Canada, and I embarked on a shared mission to create a world that embraced everyone. You have to aim high. I often chuckle now as we spoke, and Peggy would declare to me that she was winding down, so she was passing information over to me. Because in reality, she never slowed her pace. She simply kept discovering new ways to inspire and uplift those around her, teaching us all to seize the moment. Peggy's background as a nurse shaped her into a compassionate leader who consistently sought ways to make a difference. Her ability to think outside the box was matched only by her genuine care for everyone she encountered. Our conversations were always filled with laughter, ideas, and a sense of stewardship. Peggy and I collaborated on the Possibilities Project, an initiative to empower individuals in need through improved accessibility, this being through equipment, walkers, wheelchairs, power wheelchairs. This endeavor exemplified Peggy's true spirit. She never sought the spotlight, but instead dedicated herself to advocating for those who required support. Just that we had at Kiwanis Park last week, we had like a fair, and it was called It Takes a Village, and it was all proceeds of it are going to Possibilities Project. So Peggy wasn't there, unfortunately, but she was certainly having that fate on the day that she passed, October 5th. So that was quite something, I think. Even in her real estate career, she found ways to incorporate accessibility, becoming a trusted resource across the province and Canada for individuals seeking homes that met their specific needs. Well, it was only a matter of time before Peggy turned the conversation to the Kiwanis Club of Forest City, London. Throughout my life, I've been involved in community service projects, but joining a service club at that time, it wasn't on my radar. At least it wasn't until I heard Peggy speak about Kiwanis with such passion and commitment. She spoke of legacy projects like raising $1 million to help build London's Children's Hospital, and friendships she made. Of course, she spoke about the club's major fundraiser, running parking lots near Victoria Park and Centennial Hall. Peggy just loved working on the parking lots. Parking is how our club is able to support so many organizations in our community and around the world. So you can understand why Peggy wanted to give back to that event. She explained with pride the difference that Kiwanis Club of Forest City, London, made to the community, and with joy about the time she spent with them. Next thing, I found myself in a Zoom meeting during the pandemic. You'd think it was because she had sold me on joining, but Peggy didn't need to sell anybody on anything. You just put your faith in her because she was genuine, straight shooting, a person as I've ever met. If she believed in something, you didn't need to question it. Peggy would not lead you astray. Because of her, I joined the club and have been honored to be a part of this wonderful organization ever since. Peggy was a member of the Kiwanis of Forest City, London for 29 years. I believe that's the Legion of Honor material. She was the president after the merger of Kiwanis London and Kiwanis Forest City in 2006-2007. It was her honor to be a part of two good clubs joining, which then became one great club. Kiwanis is a global organization, global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world, one child at a time, one community at a time. Peggy was one of the shining examples of volunteers who lived up to that message. Peggy wasn't just a friend, she was a confidant and a mentor who supported me wholeheartedly when I became president of the Kiwanis Club of Forest City, London. Our lunches at Kelsey's were filled with delightful conversation, laughter, and inspiration. I admired her unwavering strength. We rarely discussed our personal struggles. Her resilience was a beacon of health and hope. Whenever I checked in with Peggy, she'd remind me she was winding down, but always had another project or client to assist. About 5 months ago, in that area, I contacted Peggy to meet with her at Kelsey's. We would have been able to meet on the patio, which she loves so much. And I wanted to discuss with her a recent journey I'd taken with the Kiwanis to Jamaica. And she was excited to hear all about it. However, she said she wasn't feeling that well and perhaps we could reschedule, I not realizing that she was fighting a larger battle. What a true warrior. If I aspire to live up to even a fraction of the high standards, it sets a remarkable goal, but what a wonderful aim to strive for. Peggy leaves behind a legacy of excellence, dedication to Kiwanis, and advocacy for accessibility. She embodied positivity and forward-moving spirit, cornerstones of a fulfilling life. Peggy, you were a true warrior, and I am forever grateful to have known you. Thank you for your light, your laughter, and your unwavering spirit. You will be deeply missed, but never forgotten. Could you just, there we are. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And as a young person, Peggy visited England on 2 separate occasions, and these were very formative experiences. And as such, Peggy has many longtime friends who live far from this London. And we will invite Peggy's niece Dee Dee to read a message from Peggy's dear friend Maggie Gent from England.
I've been going through so many photos the last week, and if I knew Rob was telling that story about Tennessee, I would have put one of those in because there's so many of those too. Some of the photos will reflect Peggy's time in England too, so I'm sure you've seen some of them cycle through. And I hope Maggie has connected to the live stream. Hi, Maggie. She is. We set this up so her friends in England and elsewhere can watch live who couldn't attend. So I'm reading this that Maggie sent from London, England. She's in Cyprus today and hopefully watching. Peggy arrived in Liverpool, England in 1970 by ship, the Empress of Canada. Some more mementos I found going through all her things. That was me, that part. Okay, I'm going to go back to Maggie now. She took a train to London and eventually arrived at Princess Marina House, PMH, a tower block of flats, which was the residence for staff at the Maudsley Hospital. At PMH, Peggy met and became friends with Gordon Deacon, Mark Crump, Barry Spring, and me. We would all visit the Grove Tavern, an English pub, and many good times were spent there. We had big water fights, that was all caps, throwing washing up bowls of water into the lifts at PMH, with no regard for the danger of electricity and water. I shared Peggy's flat in 1970, and Peggy always said I introduced her to cooking with mushrooms, green peppers, and wine. We were friends from then on. At the Maudsley Hospital, Peggy trained as an electroencephalogram EEG technician and gained massive experience and knowledge about EEG. When she returned to Canada, she established the training and examination system for EEG technicians. When Peggy told me she was to be an aunt, both Robbie and Dee Dee got a pair of my knitted booties. I wish I could remember this. With UK Union Jack on the sole. No niece or nephew of the Stewarts wouldn't have something from the UK. I wish I could remember those little booties, but yeah. We visited Peggy in Canada for the first time in 1976 and met her parents, her sister Barbara, her friends Anita and Big John, who are here today, of course, all the people that she had talked about. We visited the cottage on St. Clair River and had a marvelous time. We helped Peggy with a bingo night, all caps. I will always remember this, a mass of people playing bingo and smoking like chimneys. It was to benefit Epilepsy Ontario, so a good cause, but the smoke was awful. Peggy returned to London, England for a conference and stayed at the PMH again. I was aware of the date that she arrived, but not the flat number. So we got into the Volvo and drove up to PMH. I stood at the bottom of the tower, 15 to 20 blocks high, and yelled, "Stewart!" Yes, she heard me, and we all met up. Who else does that? In the late 1970s, Peggy returned to England to study at the Chalfont Centre. which specializes in epilepsy. While at the Chalfont, she needed a bike. I loaned her mine when we visited. Sylvia and Peggy shared a flat there and remained friends over the years. Sylvia married Peter Ricks, and they visited Canada many times. Although Sylvia died, Peter remained a good friend and continues to visit London, Ontario, every year. And Peter is here today, especially for this. Thank you. We were keen on narrow boating or canaling, and I didn't know what this was, but I came across one of those pictures too, and you've probably seen it in the slideshow. This is canaling through narrow canals in England. So Peggy and Anita joined us on a trip. Peggy recalled that she wasn't sure she was going to like this slow pace of things, but after 24 hours, she was a convert and loved narrow boating. On our third visit to Rose Heaven, which is Peggy's old house on Duchess Ave, which was named Rose Haven, but Maggie always called it Rose Heaven. In 2015, we saw major changes to the place. She had renovated it, and it now had a very large kitchen and an office in the front of the house. Maggie also remembers Peggy's love of Christmas. Peggy's love of Christmas is a passion we share. Although she does have real candle holders for real candles on the Christmas tree, it was only on rare occasions she would use them. I tend to use a real tree with real candles much more often, and gun-ho, a bucket of water is by the tree just in case. Mark Crump had married Jean, and Peggy was godmom to their daughter Ruth. Peggy came over to England to support Ruth and Debbie when their mom Jean died. She visited them and saw Mark Crump, and Peggy stayed with us so she could revisit the places she loved and visit Barry Spring. Years before, we visited Sissinghurst in Kent, and Peggy had a picture of the stone steps leading into the building blown up as a large poster board for the wall. And I will package this up for Peggy tomorrow and send it off to her. Or send it off to Maggie, sorry, later tomorrow. That summer, we went to RHS Swissley. Peggy loved the Rose Walk. So next year, I will revisit that Rose Walk and have a talk with Peggy while I'm there. Last and by no means least, Peggy loved Mr. Ben. That's Big Ben. And Big Ben is always said hello to by my daughter Karen on Peggy's behalf when we drive by. And this will remain. Barry and I are the last of the Grove crowd now. Peggy, you're very much loved and will be missed. Although we are bereft without you, the world's a richer and wiser and more fun place. Thank you. And Maggie has asked us to play the chimes of Big Ben now for Peggy.
We will now listen to Mark play the piano as we share a moment of personal reflection. Well, as we have heard today in the stories shared, and as the story of the starfish emulates, service, volunteerism, community, charity, family were all such important parts of Peggy's life. We can see that in the career paths Peggy chose that we've heard about today, beginning her professional career as an EEG technician at Victoria Hospital over on South Street, the old Vic Hospital. This was work that is crucial in helping people with epilepsy and brain injuries. And this began Peggy's lifelong interest in supporting people with and research for brain injuries and brain health through her many charitable endeavors. Peggy made that midlife career change buying the store at the corner of Maitland and St. James, building it, as we've heard, into a cozy and thriving and welcoming neighborhood business. She added those warm, home-like touches, like a rocking chair to the store. Milk Plus Variety gained the affectionate nickname Peg's Deponiere, a slight nod to her Scottish ancestors, having first settled in Quebec when they arrived in Canada. And these first two careers gave Peggy both the medical and the business experience, which set her up perfectly and uniquely to begin a home healthcare business when she established the first We Care franchise in London. She oversaw a large staff who provided home care, valuable home care to people who needed it in our city. This theme of care continued when Peggy moved into that real estate career, into her real estate career with Royal LePage, working with clients who had special accessibility needs to find the home that would work and be right for them. In Peggy's professional life, she always found a way to make a difference, an improvement in the lives of others, one person at a time. And we can also see that in her deep love for animals. Peggy was a lifelong dog lover. Throughout her life, she made a home for many dogs who were older and ill or were rescues, and she welcomed them into her life. This included Archie, a spaniel mix who himself had epilepsy, and a dog as well who had the perfect knack for visiting the nursing home, bringing joy to residents there. There was the golden retriever named Broca, named after the pioneering brain research doctor. There was Oliver, a dog who was blind and who has been immortalized in a painting by Dee Dee's husband, Brian. Helping dogs find their forever home did not always mean Peggy's home. As was the case with Popper, neither Peggy nor Barb felt the dog Popper was right for them. But Peggy found the perfect home for Popper with a family who had just moved from Toronto and whose son had always wanted a dog. Thanks to Peggy, she helped unite a boy with his first dog. The bond one shares with their first dog is significant. Peggy knew this firsthand. Barb remembers her and Peggy's love of animals beginning with their first dog, Trixie, a sandy-colored Cocker Spaniel their father rescued after the dog was abandoned near railroad tracks. Peggy and Barb loved Trixie. There was one time when Trixie got out of the house and was lost for some hours in the day. The family phoned into the local radio station to put out word they were looking for their dog, and if anyone were to spot her. Well, around 9 p.m. that night, a man came to the house with a dog that he thought might be Trixie. Sure enough, it was, and Peggy and Barb embraced their dog in celebration, overjoyed their dog was safely home. Their father looked to the man who had brought Trixie home and offered him a monetary reward. "No need," said the man. "Seeing your daughter's reaction is reward enough." We've heard about the boxes of Christmas decorations that Peggy held so dear. She had boxes of decorations for many holidays, Christmas, Easter, and so on. It would take days for her to put them all up on the tree. These ornaments are emblematic of the love she held for her family, ornaments she would hold on for years. Her parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and a cup, a styrofoam cup painted to look like a bell, and of course, Rob's plastic skeleton. Everything was special on that tree. Peggy was always very particular that she lived in South London. She loved Wortley Village, always supporting local businesses, shops, restaurants. As a business owner, she was always very conscious about supporting small business. Her mindfulness towards community and also towards accessibility was apparent in a detail on her front lawn, amongst the elaborate landscaping on Duchess Ave, amongst the Japanese maple and the multitude of plants and flowers, was a bench near the sidewalk. Peggy's father lived with her in his later years and would enjoy walking in Old South, but naturally would tire easily. And this made Peggy aware of how few places there are for a pedestrian to sit and rest when they need it before carrying on. And this is why Peggy wanted and had a bench on her front yard for anyone who might need it at any time. And Dee Dee shared an example of Peggy's ever-strong wit and spirit, a story from just recently. While in the hospital, Peggy had very little energy to speak, but she was still lucid and listening to everything around her. Well, Dee Dee was sitting with her one morning when the nurse came in, and the nurse asked Peggy if she wanted anything, to which Peggy very faintly and slowly replied, "George Clooney." We come together at funerals to celebrate the life of a friend, of a loved one, to grieve and process, and also to share support and love for each other. Funerals can also serve as a source of inspiration. How the person we are grieving, the person we are celebrating and giving thanks for, how they lived their life can be an inspiration for all of us. Peggy's thoughtfulness, her selflessness, her dedication, her charity of spirit can be an inspiration for us all to carry on in her way in our life. The people who make the big, meaningful influences in our lives are never really gone from our life. They continue to inform how we live and love and conduct ourselves in our lives. Their wisdom and principles continue to be a guide. They inspire us to give and make the lives of the people around us better and the world a much better place. Peggy's influence will continue to live in all of you. May she inspire us to be like the boy with the starfish, taking on those seemingly small acts that make a big difference in the lives of others. May Peggy's memory be a blessing in your life. This concludes this portion of our service. For those who will be coming to the cemetery, the funeral directors will direct you to your cars and to form the procession. And Peggy's family wishes to extend their deep thanks to all who have supported and cared for them and Peggy over the past several months in a multitude of ways. Thank you.